With little information given on how many things work in Pokemon Go, a lot of the community has banded together to figure out the hidden details in the game. However, for every discovery, there have been many myths born from misinformation. Here's 10 of the most believed ones. Legendary Pokemon are the rarest Pokemon you can catch in the main series games, with only one of each appearing. It stands to reason that legendaries would be rare, exciting finds in Pokemon Go as well. Some players have already reported their luck at catching a legendary Pokemon, a few with pictures to show off the Pokemon in question. However, these pictures are fake. No legendary Pokemon are available to catch so far. It's quite possible Niantic is saving them for a special event. Until then, Pokemon Go's legendaries are a myth, no matter how many pictures of Mew you see. Pokemon Go's developer, Niantic, also developed a similar game called Ingress. Ingress uses the Google Maps API, which led to a report that you could improve your Pokemon Go battery consumption and loading times by downloading offline Google Maps to your phone. Several users have tried it and reported success, and so the idea spread. However, it simply doesn't work. Downloading offline Google Maps has no effect on Pokemon Go. As for why some players claim to see a difference when they tried this method, it was probably a coincidence or bias due to them expecting a change, as is the case for many of the myths on this list. As you play Pokemon Go, you'll often see rustling leaves on the in-game map. To veteran Pokemon players, this screams one thing: there's a Pokemon there. After all, high grass is where you find Pokemon in the games, and later games have guaranteed battles in patches of rustling grass. But when you run to the rustling leaves in Pokemon Go, you won't necessarily find anything there. There might be a Pokemon in the general vicinity, but even that's not a guarantee. Right now, the point of the rustling grass is unclear, but we can say one thing: it doesn't mean a Pokemon is waiting. As players try to determine what makes certain Pokemon appear, a new myth about Pokemon locations surfaced: weather-based Pokemon. Water-type Pokemon in the rain, flying-type Pokemon in high wind, electric-type in thunderstorms, and so on. After all, if Pokemon are attracted to certain climates, why not certain types of weather? Well, think about it. Niantic would need to have constant access to meteorological data for every region and send that information to the phones of everyone playing Pokemon Go. That would be crazy. While it might add to the realism, it wouldn't be worth it. And they probably don't want players roaming the streets during thunderstorms to catch Pokemon either. In short, no. Weather conditions have nothing to do with the Pokemon available. Weather doesn't affect which Pokemon appear, but your location does. And if water-type Pokemon are attracted to rivers and lakes, should ghost-type Pokemon be attracted to graveyards? This myth is not only popular, it's also fed into the concerns of many people opposed to Pokemon Go, because it implies disrespect to the dead. Those people can rest easy. It's just a myth. You can spend all day in the cemetery playing Pokemon Go, but you won't have any better chance of catching a Ghastly than you would anywhere else. Likewise, they aren't more common in infamous haunted locations, although that would be kinda cool. The elusive shiny Pokemon are always highly sought in any game. These Pokemon, alternative coloured models of regular versions, are incredibly rare. How rare? As of Generation 6, your chances of encountering a shiny Pokemon are 1 in 4,096, or 0.024%. That's double what it was previously. You can imagine how exciting it is to think of catching the first shiny Pokemon in Pokemon Go, and a few screenshots suggest a few lucky players have already found them. These images, however, are false. Shiny Pokemon do not exist in Pokemon Go's data yet, so any you hear about are completely false. When you're searching for Pokemon, one of your most helpful resources is the Nearby feature, which lists the Pokemon closest to you. When it's working, if you tap one of the Pokemon, you can see how far away it is, represented by footprints. One footprint means approximately 130 feet, 2 footprints mean approximately 200 feet, and 3 footprints means approximately 300 feet. And sometimes the Nearby indicator pulses green. As players tried to figure out what this green pulse meant, a rumour soon started that the pulse meant you were facing the correct direction to walk toward the closest Pokemon. This isn't true. The green pulse appears to mean you are close to one of the Pokemon, but has nothing to do with the direction you're facing. Of course, if you're walking and getting close to a Pokemon, you're probably facing it, which is probably how the myth got started. When Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver came out, they included the Pokewalker, a special pedometer that would give you experience, items, and more for your game as you took many steps with it. This led to fans coming up with wildly inventive ways to get the most out of their Pokewalker without actually needing to walk. That attitude is less common in Pokemon Go, since the game itself sends players outside in search of Pokemon, but there are still players looking for easier ways to hatch their Pokemon eggs. And so, many people believe you can trick Pokemon Go the same way you could trick the Pokewalker, by attaching your phone to a ceiling fan, putting it on a record player, running it through the dryer, and so on. Anything to keep it in motion and give it the illusion that you're walking. However, Pokemon Go's system makes use of your GPS, not just movement. If your phone's location doesn't change, it won't register as steps, no matter how much it's spinning or shaking. Still, if you're intent on tricking the system, the old Pokewalker method of attaching it to a dog's collar and letting him run around with it should work. That is, if you trust your dog not to break your phone. As in the main Pokemon games, if you throw a Pokeball in Pokemon Go, it isn't a guarantee you'll catch the Pokemon. You might go through several Pokeballs before you catch it, and then you'll have to get more. Happily, one day the news came out you could retrieve thrown Pokeballs. Just tap the ball when it's on the screen and you'll get to keep it. Unfortunately, this is one of the most widespread Pokemon Go myths at the time. Many people still believe it, but it isn't true. Due to the game's server issues, it occasionally fails to register that a player has thrown a Pokeball. If this happens, your total number of Pokeballs won't decrease, because you technically didn't use one at all despite seeing it on the screen. And if this happens during a battle where you tapped the thrown ball, it's easy to come to a false conclusion that you retrieved it. At best, tapping the Pokeball does nothing. At worst, you could accidentally throw a second one, even if you didn't intend to. Right now, any method you hear to keep your Pokeballs is nothing more than a myth. Since the evolution works differently in Pokemon Go than any in the main game series, there was a great deal of confusion over how to determine what Eevee would evolve into. It seemed random, which didn't sit well with players interested in a specific evolution. But like anything random, it's possible to find correlations and mistake them for causes, and soon 2 evolution myths were born. First, people thought Eevee's secondary attack determined what it would evolve into, and Eevee's special attack would either be Dig, Body Slam or Swift, and each was tied to a specific evolution. So, which was which? Well, guides varied on this point. Since it's just a myth, it wasn't consistent among players. Second, since the 3 evolutions currently in Pokemon Go, Flareon, Vaporeon and Jolteon, corresponded to the 3 gym colours, some players discovered that Eevee would evolve according to the closest gym colour. If you evolved Eevee near a blue gym, you would get a Vaporeon, and so on. This is also a myth. In fact, all information so far points to Eevee's evolution being completely random. However, you can manually control which Pokemon your Eevee evolves into by changing its name to one of the names of the 3 Eevee brothers from the anime. An Eevee named Pyro will evolve into Flareon, an Eevee named Raina will evolve into Vaporeon, and an Eevee named Sparky will evolve into Jolteon. There was some concern this might be a myth as well, since it didn't work for some players, but failures are most likely server issues. Niantic has confirmed that this method works. Eeveelutions determined by a shout out to the anime? Sometimes reality is stranger than myth. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this week's list. Here's a secret myth so believed it couldn't be on the list. People believe Team Mystic and Team Valor are reputable teams and are on the same playing field as Team Instinct. This is obviously not true. Am I right, my Team Instinct friends? You know I am. See you in the next video. If you did, leave a like. And if you want to see more Pokemon Go content, click here for my top 10 things I wish I knew sooner in Pokemon Go. Or here for my top 10 darkest Pokédex entries. And if you want to see more lists in the future, subscribe. I try to make one every week.